So this is going to be my very last video ever using the Sony a7 III, which I'm recording on now. That is because I am about to sell this camera in a matter of hours. And the reason that I'm selling this camera is because over the last 3 months, I have actually acquired 3 new camera bodies, rendering this camera obsolete. Matter of fact, let me show you. So here are all the cameras that I purchased starting from about the beginning of May. We have the first camera I got, which I know this is the first one because I got the cage on it. This is the Sony a7 IV. 2 weeks after that, around mid-May, I think it was like around the 16th or so, I bought another Sony a7 IV. And about a week ago, probably about a week and a half ago, I bought this right here, the Sony a7S III. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably like, what will make someone go from having one camera, which this Sony a7 III that I'm recording on, I had this since about September 2020, so a little bit under 2 years, might as well say 2 years, I had this camera. And literally, I came from a Canon Rebel T7i, upgraded to this camera, sold the T7i. So I shot on the Sony a7 III exclusively for about 2 years. It was literally my only camera. April of this year, April 2022, I had one camera. 3 months later, I have 3 cameras, almost $10,000 worth of cameras. So it's kind of crazy. In this video, I want to get into just the explanation of how I went from 1 to 3. So it was about January or February of this year, I got hired for a job to shoot an interview. And I knew how I wanted to shoot the interview. I knew I wasn't going to be able to get it done with just one camera body. So what I did was I rented a Sony a6600, which that is a pretty decent camera. The way I did my edit with the footage, it actually looked like I used 3 cameras because I had like a wide lens on this camera, then I had the Sony a6600 pointed at one subject, and then if I wanted to zoom in on the other subject, I just cropped in on the main camera. So fast forward to around mid-April, I had actually gotten hired for 2 different jobs, one of which was a wedding, and the other one was kind of like a YouTube channel type of show where multiple camera angles were needed. So the first thought I had in my head was like, hey, how about I go buy that Sony a6600 because, you know, the colors match well with the a7 III. Although it's crop sensor, it's cheap, I don't have to break the bank, and I can just go ahead and just buy that. Now, one thing I will say about buying gear is that like, I like to future-proof myself when I buy gear. And the reason that made me not go with the a6600 was because I was like, dang, this camera has been out for like, I think like 4 years now. I think it came out like 2017, maybe 2018. And I'm just like, it's crop sensor. I know I want a full frame. Pretty much I just analyzed everything about the camera and I'm like, if I buy this camera, I'm gonna like use it for these jobs I have, and then I'm instantly gonna be just unsatisfied with owning it. So why would I buy it? And around that time, that's when the Sony a7 IV, or at least this one, they had just came back in stock because this camera came out in October and then it was like sold out for like a while. And then like right around April, they started coming back in stock. So I said, you know what? You know, although it's gonna break the bank a little bit, although, you know, I might have to move some things around or just, you know, do some things to acquire this camera, I'm gonna get a lot more out of buying the a7 IV, you know, over time, like I said, future-proofing myself, than going with this older camera, a crop sensor camera that I know I don't want. So that's what I did. In the beginning of May, I went ahead and bought me an a7 IV. I had the a7 III and the a7 IV. You know, I was hella satisfied. So when I went to the first day of the YouTube show recording, I actually learned that it was gonna be an ongoing thing, and I actually ended up coming back 2 more times. And another thing I learned is that I actually really needed 3 camera bodies. They told me I really only needed 2 cameras, but once I got there and I just assessed the situation of what I needed to do, I needed 3. So I was like, dag, how am I gonna get this done? I don't wanna have a Sony a7 III, an a7 IV, then getting the a6600 and just totally using 3 different cameras. Like, this is gonna kind of, I mean, you gotta use what you got or get what you can afford, but at the end of the day, I'm just like, okay, I need 3 cameras. the wedding that I had to do was still about 2 weeks away, and I'm thinking to myself like, okay, you know, it's either do or die. This is the time that I really want to invest into my business, and I want to, you know, grow. And I feel a little slightly overwhelmed because I need to buy things, but at the same time, I feel good because this is when I want to buy things. I want to buy things because I need them, not just because I want them. So that's when I just said, you know what? Instead of, you know, getting an A7 IV, then going backwards and getting an A6600, which I'm still not going to want after a while, how about I further future-proof myself and get another A7 IV? That way, you know, I can have a little bit more consistency, even though I still got the A7 III. Of course, this A7 IV became my primary camera. I can have, you know, a nice secondary camera and another A7 IV, and then I got the A7 III as like my third, you know, backup. And it was just always crazy to me that a month prior, this was like my primary camera, the A7 III, and then boom, at a snap of a finger, that was my third camera, and I have two A7 IVs. That was just always just real crazy to me. So May came and went. I finished up that YouTube project for that client. I also did that wedding where I had my 3 cameras. Everything was cool. But then I started to dabble into S-Log 3. Now, if you're real familiar with these cameras, you know that the Sony a7 IV is 10-bit and the Sony a7 III is only 8-bit, meaning that, I mean, you can record, you can access S-Log 3, but it's not good to film in S-Log 3 because since it's an 8-bit camera, you're not gonna really be able to do much with the footage, you know, pull colors and all this stuff, because it's gonna break down because it's only an 8-bit camera. And that's not something that I wanted to like really, you know, harp on because again, it's only supposed to be a third camera body. I didn't really want to make too much of it because I'm like, at the end of the day, if I'm recording, you know, something, I need one camera, I have one camera. I have a backup for that one camera. If I need 2 cameras, you know, I got 2 cameras. I always thought like, you know, what's the real chance of me ever really needing like 3 cameras on a consistent basis to where I need to have like the same picture profile in all of them to where it would really matter enough that I have to buy a third camera. Well, little did I know, in late June, early July, I actually got hired to do another type of YouTube channel show type of thing, production, where this was even more ongoing and continuing than the last one I did. The last one I did literally lasted like the entire month of May. This one now is like kind of like until type of thing. Like I don't know when it's gonna end. So at that point, I'm like, okay, yeah, I got 3 cameras. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna just try to find the best, because I really don't wanna spend no more money on cameras. I really wanna start upgrading my lenses and things like that. I said, you know what? I'm gonna just, you know, record on Cine 2 on all my cameras. That way, I just know I can match picture profiles and I don't have to have no problems like really trying to match colors and post and do all these crazy things. But after a while, really pondering on that thought, I'm just like, okay, I have a 10-bit camera, I have a Sony a7 IV with all these capabilities. Even though I'm recording in a studio and dynamic range isn't the most important thing, just the ability to be able to make my footage look a certain way. I mean, when you record an S-Log 3, when you bring it back to Rec 709 and grade it, it looks better than any other available picture profile. So I did the day 1 of that new show and it was cool. What I actually ended up doing was recording these 2 Sony a7 IVs and S-Log 3, and I just did my regular Cine 2 picture profile, which it matches pretty well once I edit it. And I was actually just gonna keep riding with that. I was like, you know, really satisfied. Like I said, again, I got 3 cameras. I don't wanna be picky. What am I gonna go do, buy another a7 IV? At that point, when I really started to think about the possibility of buying a new camera, I'm thinking about the features of this camera. I'm like, it has everything I need. The only thing that I don't like about the a7 IV was the fact that I couldn't do full frame 4K 60, and there is no 4K 120p. So I'm like, if I was to buy a new camera, it would either be the Sony a7S III and the FX3, which are $3,500 and like $3,900 respectively. And I'm like, I don't want to spend that type of money, because just to be able to use S-Log 3 in a studio shoot, it's really not worth it. Don't want to buy another A7 IV, because who wants to have like 3 A7 IVs, even though that's consistency. I don't want to like spend a whole nother $2,500 just to get an A7 IV, just to match the footage. That's just not something I wanted to do. But then last week, I went on eBay. Because I sell things on eBay. I actually just upgraded my my Ronin S to the RS3. So I was selling my Ronin S original, and I just happened to notice that all the A7S IIIs were priced at $3,000. And originally I thought I was looking at like the used A7S III, so I just typed in the search bar A7S III, and then I saw that they had like bundles, and they had like things. The bundles were like $3,100. The camera was like $29.99, and I'm like, dang, it went from $3,500 to $500 off, and I'm just like, is this a typo? But turns out it wasn't a typo, and I didn't know whether or not this was like a temporary sale or like, you know, just like a flash sale. I don't know how long this thing was gonna last. So that's when my, you know, wheels got to churning. I'm like, you know what? If I sell my Sony a7 III, I can at least get between $1,200 and $1,400 for this camera. Meaning that the A7S III would cost me about anywhere between like $1,600 to maybe like $1,800. You know, with this ongoing job that I have, you know, extra income, I'm investing into my business, I'm getting more, I'm gonna have more capability with the A7S III. I'm gonna just have that consistency of S-Log 3 across the board. I mean, it took me all of an hour to convince myself to buy the Sony A7S III, which is probably gonna become like my main just camera at this point, my main video camera. Because as far as video is concerned, the A7 IV, don't get me wrong, it's a beast. Only thing I don't like about it, doesn't have that full frame 4K 60 and the rolling shutter. You know, you film a handheld, I mean, you should be as stable and still as possible, but that rolling shutter is terrible. It's better in this camera. Also, the Sony A7S III has better dynamic range. So that's when I decided to just go ahead and just buy the Sony A7S III. And pretty much that's how I ended up with 2 A7 IVs and 1 Sony A7S III. And the crazy part is I've been so busy with like different jobs and just getting hired to do this and do that. I ain't gonna lie to you, I'm probably the only person who has ever bought this Sony A7S III. I've had it for probably about 6 or 7 days now. I cut it on, you know what I'm saying? I put a lens on, I put a 35 on it, I kind of fooled around with it. That's it. My RS3, I have not even tried it out yet, and I've had it for like 10 days. Like, I've been like that busy. But again, I guess the whole purpose of this video is, you know, if you're watching this and you wanna feel like you gotta upgrade your gear, if you want to upgrade your gear, by all means, if you wanna upgrade your gear, upgrade your gear. That whole thing that they say that gear doesn't matter, that's BS. Like, don't get me wrong, don't wait till you get a certain thing to do something. If you have a tool or camera that you can do something with, don't feel like I gotta wait until I upgrade to this before I can do that, because that's gonna mess you up. But don't let people tell you that gear doesn't matter at the same time, because as you can see through my long story, it does matter and it can play a part. And you wanna buy things when you really need them. You don't wanna just get it and it just be sitting around. You don't wanna get a camera for a feature that it has that may be cool, may be great, may be the best feature, but you don't really need it at the same time. So yeah, man, that's pretty much my story of how I came to own 3 cameras, buy 3 totally new cameras in the last 3 months. I'm actually gonna be packing up this Sony a7 III immediately after this video, and it's going to be sold for $1,250. So my Sony a7S III actually cost me $1,750. So there you go. So that's where I'm gonna go ahead and end this video. I really hope you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and I will catch you guys in my next video filming with the Sony a7S III. Peace out.